Somewhere along the way, you started accepting things you swore you never would. Treatment you said you'd never tolerate. Situations you promised yourself you'd never stay in. A version of your life that is so far from the one you planned that you've quietly stopped comparing them because the distance hurts too much to look at directly. You're not where you said you'd be, and the worst part? You can't fully explain why. It is not because you are weak. It is not bad luck. It is not the people around you, though they have played their part. It is because nobody handed you the rules, the real ones, the ones that determine whether people respect you or simply tolerate you, whether you attract what you want or settle for what remains, whether your life, at the end of it, looks like something you built or something that simply happened while you were still trying to figure out how to begin. The Stoics had those rules, 21 of them, and every single one of them is going to name something you have already felt, something you've been carrying without a word for it. By the time this video ends, you will not be the same man who pressed play. Stay. You need what comes next. Rule 1. Never return to the woman who betrayed your trust. There is a very specific kind of suffering that has no name, but every man who has experienced it would recognize immediately. It is the suffering of returning to someone after they have shown you who they are and pretending you did not see what you saw. Telling yourself the story that people change, that this time is different, that love is enough to rebuild what was broken by choice. It is almost never different. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." The second part of that rule applies here with devastating precision. If you return to someone who chose to betray you, you are living inside a story that is not true. You are acting as if the thing that happened did not reveal something real about the person who did it. It did. It always does. This rule is not about coldness. It is not about the inability to forgive. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, freedom from the weight of anger that only punishes you. But forgiveness is not the same as return. You can forgive someone completely and still understand that the door they walked out of or burned on their way through does not need to be reopened. The man who returns again and again to what has already hurt him is not loving. He is afraid. Afraid that this is the best available. Afraid that departure means being alone. The Stoics had a word for that fear. It is not love. It is attachment dressed as love. And the man who cannot distinguish between the two will spend years of his life in the wrong rooms. You teach people how to treat you by what you accept the second time. Rule 2. Never permit disrespect to pass without acknowledgement. Not every acknowledgement is a confrontation. Not every boundary requires a raised voice. In fact, the most powerful response to disrespect is often the quietest. The simple, calm withdrawal of access that makes the terms of engagement unmistakably clear. Epictetus said, "It is not he who reviles or strikes you who insults you, but your opinion that these things are insulting." This is the deep Stoic truth about disrespect, that your response to it is the real measure of whether it has power over you. The man who erupts at every slight has handed the person who slighted him control of his entire emotional state. The man who simply, calmly, without drama or explanation, adjusts what he gives to a relationship that has shown him its quality, that man has demonstrated something far more powerful than any argument. But there is an important distinction here. Epictetus was not saying disrespect does not matter. He was saying that the meaning you assign to it determines whether it injures you. What the Stoics would not advise is silence that becomes accommodation. The man who absorbs disrespect without any acknowledgement, who laughs it off, who explains it away, who tells himself he is being the bigger person when he is actually simply afraid of confrontation, is not practicing Stoic wisdom. He is practicing avoidance wearing Stoic clothing. Acknowledge it. Calmly, once. The words are less important than the fact of the acknowledgement itself. What matters is that you know, and they know, that you saw what happened, and you have a standard. The man who has a standard is the man who keeps people to it. Rule 3. Never shake a hand sitting down. This rule is ancient, and the men who follow it rarely know exactly why. They simply feel in their bones that it is right. When you rise to meet someone, when you stand, face them, extend your hand, you are performing something far older than politeness. You are saying, "You have my full attention." You are saying, "I am present in this moment," not managing you from a position of comfortable indifference. You are saying, "I respect the transaction of meeting another human being enough to bring my whole self to it." The Stoics were precise about presence. Marcus wrote, "Confine yourself to the present," not as a meditation instruction, as a standard for how to be in every moment. A man who shakes hands sitting down is not present. He is somewhere between here and wherever his comfort has kept him, and people feel that gap, even if they never name it. The handshake is a small thing, but character is constructed from small things. The man who brings his full presence to every interaction, however brief, however ordinary, is building something that cannot be manufactured on demand when the stakes are high. You practice presence in the small moments so that it is available in the ones that matter. Rule 4. Never spend what you cannot afford to impress people who are not watching. Here is the painful truth about most financial decisions made to impress others. The people you are trying to impress are not watching. They are thinking about their own lives, their own finances, their own image. The audience you are performing for exists almost entirely in your own mind. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in ancient Rome, wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." He had access to every luxury the ancient world could offer. He owned multiple properties. He was one of the most famous figures in Rome, and he spent the most intellectually productive period of his life writing about the emptiness of wealth pursued for the wrong reasons. The man who goes broke to project an image of success has committed a specific kind of self-betrayal. He has traded the actual substance of financial security for the appearance of it, and appearances require constant maintenance. The real thing, the actual security, the actual freedom that comes from having more than you spend, requires only that you build it quietly, without an audience, without a performance. Marcus Aurelius auctioned the imperial palace furnishings during the Antonine Plague rather than raise taxes on a suffering population. The most powerful man in the world chose the simpler path, the more honest path, the path that had nothing to prove to anyone. That is not poverty. That is a different kind of wealth entirely. Build the real thing. Let the performance wait. Rule 5. Never take the last piece of something you did not pay for. This rule is so small that it might seem out of place in a list that includes philosophy and character. It belongs here precisely because of its smallness. The Stoics understood something about small acts that most people miss. They are never actually small. They are windows. The man who instinctively does not take the last piece of food he did not provide is the man whose first thought in a shared space is not, "What can I take?" but "What does courtesy require?" That instinct, that automatic reaching toward generosity before convenience, is character. It does not exist only in grand moments. It exists, or it doesn't, and the small moments are where you find out which. Epictetus taught that every action is a declaration of priorities. The man who takes the last piece has prioritized his own satisfaction over the comfort of others without even realizing he made a choice. The man who doesn't has built, in that tiny, invisible moment, the kind of character that others feel without ever being able to name the specific source. Character is the accumulation of invisible decisions. Every invisible decision is a vote for the person you are becoming. Vote carefully, even about small things, especially about small things. Rule 6. Always be in the business of becoming better. There is a specific kind of comfort that destroys more men than any external enemy ever has. It is the comfort of good enough. The moment a man decides that where he is sufficient, that the version of himself currently operating does not require further development, is the moment he begins to drift backward without feeling the movement. Marcus Aurelius wrote in the private journal he never intended anyone to read, "Within 10 days you will seem a god even to those who are now treating you like a beast or a baboon, if you return to your principles and the worship of reason." He was not writing to inspire. He was writing to pull himself back from the comfortable drift that even emperors are susceptible to. The ambition the Stoics endorsed was not the ambition for more things, more status, more recognition. It was the ambition to become more capable, more wise, more virtuous, more honest with oneself. The man who wakes up tomorrow slightly more disciplined, slightly more considered, slightly more worthy of his own respect, that man is moving in the direction that makes everything else possible. What are you better at today than you were a year ago? Name it specifically. If the answer is unclear, that is the work. Rule 7. Protect those behind you. Respect those beside you. This is perhaps the most complete description of masculine character in the entire list. 2 directions, 2 obligations, both required simultaneously. To protect those behind you, your family, the people in your care, the ones who depend on the stability and reliability of your presence, is the first and oldest responsibility of a man who has decided to be something to others. Not domination, protection. The willingness to stand between what you love and what would harm it. To respect those beside you, your equals, your colleagues, your competitors, the men and women who are building their own lives in parallel with yours, is the second responsibility. The man who protects those behind him but treats his peers as competition to be crushed has misunderstood his own strength. Strength that is only turned toward the weak is not strength. It is cowardice wearing a larger frame. Marcus Aurelius, governing the most powerful empire on earth, wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together." He was not writing about tolerance. He was writing about the genuine recognition that the people beside you are not obstacles. They are the material of a shared life. Treat them accordingly. Rule 8. Pause before you answer. Every single time. A man who has spoken with Marcus Aurelius, who spent any time in the presence of someone who had genuinely internalized this practice, would have noticed something immediately. He never seemed rushed. Not because he was slow, because he had decided that the space between a question and his answer belonged to him. The 1 to 3 second pause before responding is one of the most psychologically powerful tools available to a man in conversation. Here is why. The person asking the question expects an immediate response. Immediacy signals 2 things. Either the question was so easy it required no thought, or the person answering it is reactive, driven by the impulse to respond rather than the intention to speak well. The pause communicates the opposite. It says, "I am considering what you have asked." It says, "My words are deliberate." And it says, without saying anything at all, "I am not governed by the pressure of your expectation." Epictetus taught that between every stimulus and every response, there is a space. The practice of philosophy is largely the practice of widening that space. Not to be slow, to be accurate, to give the response that actually serves the moment rather than the one that simply arrives first. In any important conversation, Job interview, negotiation, confrontation, first meeting. The pause is power. Use it without apology. Rule 9. Never beg for what should be freely given. Love that must be begged for is not love. Respect that must be demanded is not respect. The relationship you must perform for, negotiate endlessly for, diminish yourself to sustain, that relationship is costing you something it will never return. Epictetus said, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are." This sounds like resignation. It is the opposite. It is the precise recognition that the man who begs for a place in someone's life has already told that person how much of a place he believes he deserves. The Stoics understood something about neediness that modern psychology has since confirmed. It does not produce the connection it is reaching for. It produces distance. The man who is desperate to be chosen becomes, almost inevitably, less worth choosing, not because of anything external about him, but because the desperation itself communicates a belief in his own insufficiency. You do not beg for a seat at a table. You build a table. You set a standard. You are present with your full self, without apology and without performance. The people worth keeping in your life will stay. The ones who require that you diminish yourself to earn them, release them, and mean it. Rule 10. Maintain the body with the same discipline you demand of the mind. Seneca wrote, "We treat the body rigorously so that it is not disobedient to the mind." This is the Stoic case for physical discipline, and it is not the one most people expect. The Stoics were not interested in physical fitness for aesthetics or performance or social signaling. They were interested in it because the body that has been allowed to soften through comfort and avoidance becomes the body that resists the mind's directions. The body that has been trained, tested deliberately, pushed past the point of comfort on a regular schedule, becomes a body that follows, that cooperates, that is available for what the mind requires of it. 4 times a week minimum, not because a number on a scale matters, because the man who has maintained a physical practice through every season of his life, through the weeks when motivation is available and the weeks when it is completely absent, has confirmed something to himself that cannot be confirmed any other way. He has confirmed that he does not require ideal conditions to do what he has decided to do. And that confirmation carries into every other area of his life with a force that no amount of planning or intention can replicate. The gym does not make you fit. The habit of returning to it, especially when you do not want to, makes you something much more valuable than fit. It makes you consistent. And consistent is what produces everything. Rule 11. If you were not invited, do not ask to go. This rule is about dignity, and it is about the precise kind of dignity that most people are never taught, because it requires a level of self-respect that is uncomfortable to practice. The man who asks to be included in something he was not included in has just done 2 things simultaneously. He has made the host uncomfortable by forcing a social decision they had already made, and he has communicated to everyone present, including himself, that he values his presence somewhere more than he values the integrity of his own position. The Stoics spoke frequently about indifference to external opinion, not as coldness, but as the natural consequence of having an internal standard that does not require external confirmation. The man who is genuinely secure in who he is does not need to be at every gathering, in every room, part of every circle. He has enough. His own company is sufficient. His own work is engaging. His own life is full. You are never diminished by an invitation that did not arrive. You are only diminished by making your peace contingent on one. Rule 12. Always carry cash. This rule is practical at the surface. Beneath the surface, it is about something else entirely. A man who always carries cash is a man who is prepared, who has thought ahead, who moves through the world with the quiet readiness of someone who does not require things to go perfectly to function when they don't. The Stoics practiced what Seneca called premeditatio malorum, the deliberate anticipation of difficulty, not to create anxiety, but to eliminate it. The man who has thought through what he will do when the card reader is down, when the restaurant accepts only cash, when a friend needs something unexpected and immediate. That man never finds himself scrambling, improvising, performing helplessness. He is already ready. Preparation is not pessimism. It is the specific form of respect for reality that allows a man to be generous when the moment calls for it, because he has never assumed the moment will cooperate with his preferences. Carry cash. Be ready. The habit costs almost nothing and signals everything. Rule 13. Dress well, every time, for every occasion. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of meeting life with full presence, of not sleepwalking through the ordinary moments as if only the significant ones deserve your full engagement. The way you dress is one of the clearest visible expressions of whether you believe the moment you are walking into deserves your full attention. This is not about fashion. It is not about expense. It is not about conforming to anyone else's standard of what looks good. It is about the deliberate decision made before you walk out the door to show up to your life as if it matters. The man who dresses well for no particular occasion is the man who has decided that every occasion is particular. That meeting the day with intention, even the quiet days, even the ordinary ones, even the ones that will not be photographed or witnessed by anyone, is the standard he has set for himself. Epictetus. First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. The man who would be someone who carries himself with dignity and care does what that person does, including, before he has done anything else today, putting on clothing that confirms the decision. Small declaration, consistent practice, cumulative transformation. Rule 14. Listen more than you speak. And when you look at someone, actually see them. There is a man in every room who is already composing his response before you have finished speaking. You can feel it. The attention that has already moved on, that is only maintaining the surface appearance of engagement, while the real cognitive work of self-preparation runs beneath it. And there is the other kind of man, the one who listens until you are done, who pauses before he responds, who, when he looks at you, is genuinely looking, not performing engagement, but actually present in it. The Stoics believed that listening, real listening, was a form of respect that most people claim to offer and almost none of them actually do. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the frustrating habits of the people around him, their noise, their self-absorption, their addiction to the sound of their own voice. And he wrote about his own practice of restraint, of saying less, of listening more completely. The man who listens is the man who knows things, who understands what is actually happening rather than what he assumed was happening when he stopped paying attention, who can speak, when he does speak, with the precision of someone who has actually gathered information rather than simply waited for his turn. Make eye contact. Actual eye contact, not performance. The kind of contact that says, I am here, I am present, and what you are saying is reaching me. That is one of the rarest and most powerful things one human being can give another. Rule 15. Build multiple streams of income. Never depend on one source of anything. Seneca wrote, Omnia lucili aliena sunt, tempus tantum nostrum est. Everything is alien to us, Lucilius. Time alone is ours. He was writing about time, but the principle applies with equal force to financial dependence. The man who depends on a single employer, a single client, a single income stream, has handed the conditions of his financial peace to a single decision made by someone else. The Stoics were not opposed to wealth. They were opposed to the psychological relationship with wealth that makes its loss devastating rather than manageable. The man who has built multiple streams, however modest, has distributed his dependence. He has ensured that no single door closing ends the story. The principle is not ambition in the conventional sense. It is resilience. It is the specific form of financial wisdom that comes from understanding, I control what I build. I do not control what others decide to take away. Find the second stream, then the third. Not because one is not enough to live on, because sovereignty requires that no single person or institution holds the power to determine your entire financial reality. Rule 16. Never speak badly of someone behind their back. Here is the thing about speaking badly of people when they are not present to respond. It says almost nothing about them. It says everything about you. The man who tears down absent people is advertising something about the quality of his own character that most people receive unconsciously but receive completely. Every person in the room hears it and files it, not as information about the person being discussed, as information about the person doing the discussing. If he speaks this way about them when they are not here, he speaks this way about me when I am not here. Marcus Aurelius, in his private journal, wrote extensively about the people who frustrated him, the meddling, the dishonest, the ungrateful. He did not pretend they did not exist. He wrote about them with honest feeling, and then he wrote, "They have a nature related to my own." The private acknowledgement of frustration, followed by the return to shared humanity, followed by the public restraint that kept his relationships clean. Process the frustration privately, maintain the restraint publicly. The man who can hold both of those things simultaneously, who can feel honestly without performing the feeling at the expense of absent people, is the man whose word carries weight, because people know that the weight is not dependent on the audience. Rule 17. Invest in experiences over possessions. Seneca wrote, "Begin at once to live, and count each separate day as a separate life." He was not writing about minimalism. He was writing about presence, about the specific form of attention that recognizes that what you are accumulating is not objects, but moments, and that moments, not objects, are the substance of a life. The dinner you shared with someone you love, the trip that changed how you understood the world, the conversation that stayed with you for years, the morning in a place you had never been before. These are not luxuries. They are the inventory of what a life actually contains when you strip away everything that can be photographed for its own sake. Objects depreciate, experiences compound. The man who invested in the experience, the challenge, the journey, the connection, carries something that cannot be taken, cannot lose value, and continues to generate meaning long after the moment itself has passed. This is not an argument against owning good things. It is an argument for the order of priority. Get the experience first. The object will be there when you return. Rule 18. Keep every promise, especially the small ones. Here is where most men fail. Not on the large promises. Those come with enough social pressure and visibility to sustain the commitment. The small ones. The, "I'll call you tomorrow." The, "Let me look into that and get back to you." The, "I'll be there at 7." The casual, low-stakes commitments that seemed small enough in the moment to be cost-free if they slip. They are not cost-free. They are the most expensive commitments you make, because the accumulation of broken small promises is the slow erosion of something that cannot be repaired quickly once it is gone. Not other people's trust in you, your own trust in yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily about the gap between who he intended to be and who he had been that day. The evening examination, the private accounting, was the mechanism that kept the gap from widening into a distance too great to close. Every kept promise, however small, was a data point. Every broken one was a data point. And the accumulation of those data points was not a record for anyone else. It was the man's relationship with his own word. Your word is the currency of your character. Spend it carefully. Honor every debt. The man whose small promises are reliable is the man whose large commitments are believed. Rule 19. Never celebrate the failure of another man. There is a specific impulse, quiet, private, almost never admitted, that arises when someone you compete with, someone who has more than you, someone you resent, fails publicly. The impulse to feel satisfied, to feel that the field has been leveled, to feel, however briefly, that their falling has somehow raised you. It has not. It never does. And the man who examines this impulse honestly will find something uncomfortable at its root. The celebration of another man's failure is possible only for a man whose ambition is calibrated relative to others rather than absolute to his own standard. A man who is genuinely building something of his own has no energy left for celebrating another's collapse. He is too busy with the construction. Seneca wrote, "It is not that the man who acts well is lucky and the man who fails is unlucky. It is that each is receiving the precise return on the life they have actually lived." If that is true, and the Stoics believed it was, then another man's failure is not your opportunity. It is simply the natural consequence of his choices arriving at his door. Your only job is to ensure that your choices are producing something you would want arriving at yours. Wish the falling man well. Mean it. Then return to your work. Rule 20. Master your emotional responses before they master your life. There was a Roman commander, a proud man, an experienced soldier, who received news in the middle of a campaign that his most trusted lieutenant had betrayed him. He felt the rage arrive immediately, physically, before a single coherent thought had formed. And in the space of 30 seconds, he had to choose, act from the rage or from the philosophy. He had been reading Marcus Aurelius for years, and what he remembered, standing in that tent with the dispatch in his hand, was this: how much more harmful are the consequences of anger and grief than the circumstances that aroused them? He took a breath. He responded to the dispatch with measured words. He acted not from the heat of the moment, but from the cool clarity of what the situation actually required. And the decision he made in that measured state was the right one. A decision that, made in rage, would have been catastrophic. The emotion is not the problem. Every Stoic will tell you this. The Stoics did not suppress feeling. They felt everything. They simply refused to be governed by the first wave. They took the pause. The 1 to 3 second pause from Rule 8 extended here to hours or days, and they acted from what remained after the wave had passed. The man who cannot govern his own emotional responses is not a free man. He is controlled by whoever or whatever last provoked him. That is not freedom. That is a very sophisticated form of slavery to his own reaction. Feel everything. Be moved by nothing that does not deserve to move you. Choose when to act. That is mastery. Rule 21. Build something that would matter, even if no one ever knew you built it. This is the deepest rule in the entire list, and it is the one that most men reach, if they reach it at all, only after having spent years building things for the wrong reasons. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the ancient world. His image appeared on every coin in an empire that stretched from Britain to Egypt. His name was spoken by 40 million people, and in his private journal, the one he never intended to share, the one he wrote for no one but himself, He wrote about impermanence with the honesty of a man who had long since made his peace with it. In a short time, you will have forgotten everything. In a short time, everything will have forgotten you. He was not being morbid. He was being liberated by the truth. Because the man who truly accepts that his name will eventually fade, that the monument will crumble, that the record will be lost, that the world will keep spinning long after any trace of him has been absorbed back into the fabric of it, that man is free to build for the only reason that actually survives the reckoning. Because it was right, because it was good, because the work itself demanded to be done, and he was the person who chose to do it. Build the thing that deserves to exist regardless of who takes credit. Do the work that is worth doing, even if no one is watching and no one will ever know. Write the journal no one will read. Keep the promise no one will remember. Maintain the standard in the room where only you are present. That is not anonymity. That is integrity in its purest form. The man who builds like that leaves something behind that has nothing to do with whether his name is attached to it. He leaves better than he found it. And that is the only legacy that matters. 21 rules, not a single one of them complicated. Every one of them harder to live than to understand. That is the nature of Stoic philosophy. Not a set of ideas that require a higher intelligence to grasp, but a set of practices that require a deeper honesty to apply. Marcus Aurelius understood something that he wrote about with quiet urgency in his final years. The rules only change your life if they change your behavior. Not if you recognize them, not if you share them, not if you feel the weight of them in this moment and carry that weight for the next few hours before it fades back into the ordinary. They change your life if you pick one, tonight, specifically tonight, and decide that tomorrow will be different in that one small way, 1 degree. The same degree Marcus was always trying to turn the ship. He was not trying to become a different man. He was trying to become more completely and more consistently the man he had already decided to be. So are you. Chaos is loud. Ancient wisdom is louder. Tell me in the comments, which of these 21 rules named something that you needed to hear today? Not the most impressive sounding one, the real one, the one that hit somewhere you didn't expect. I read every single one.